All right, I'm going to try this one more time and we'll see how we go. Okay, we had technical issues before. So, what I'm planning to do, like I said before, is I want to go through um, the SEC and just look at the numbers basically. To do that, um, I need to, um, and I'll make this big right here so we can see that. See if it's coming up all right. So I'm showing that as all right. My sound there. If anybody's on and can hear my sound, let me know. Because I don't know if I'm just talking into a vacuum right now or not. It's terrible. Um, anyway, let's just get into it. So when we're looking at SEC play, basically, what I was saying before, I'm not sure when I got cut off, but essentially this is the preseason predictions right here. Um, in the blue on the left, that is the media right here. So this was what the media thought would happen. So they thought it'd be South Carolina. Obviously, everybody knew South Carolina was the favorite. Then it was Texas, LSU, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Florida, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, and then the coaches was pretty similar. They had South Carolina, and the coaches is in white. South Carolina, Texas, LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Kentucky, Auburn, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, and then Vanderbilt, Georgia, Florida, Missouri, and Arkansas. And it is pretty much so far the big mover, I would say, has been Vanderbilt. So, and then I've gone and looked at like I've broken it down. I'm going to go through the top five or the top eight teams because if you look at um, if you look at the factor of four, which I like looking at, I think it really breaks down quite nicely and shows you who are the best and you can see how the conference breaks down when we look at this. So if we're down here, let me get my mouse over here. So South Carolina, obviously their net rating is plus 33. They're the best. I mean, shock me. Everybody knows that. Then it's interesting after here, you get Kentucky plus 19, Texas plus 18, Ole Miss plus 14, LSU plus 13, Tennessee plus 6, Vanderbilt plus 5, Oklahoma point 0.8, Alabama minus 1.1, and then Mississippi State is minus 2.7. And then after that, when you go down, then the separation gets a bit dramatic there as it goes like minus 10.8 on net rating and just gets worse and worse. So the obvious divide for these guys right now is that obviously it is um, those top eight teams. The question is how much is their schedule impacting that as well? I mean, clearly South Carolina is the best team. I mean, it's sort of Captain Obvious statement right there. Um, it, after that, I guess my real questions are Kentucky. How real are they? Because their second half gets really complicated. So let's take a look at the schedules first. So I'll just go in order. So we'll go down over here, and I'm just going to break down the schedules one at a time. So if we take a look right here at uh, let's see if I can cover that up. Let me see if I can cover up LSU. So if we take a look at LSU's schedule. Um, Hold on. So the Gamecock schedule, South Carolina, they're good wins. Obviously, they've gotten Texas, Oklahoma, LSU, Tennessee, and the conference goes through them. They ran the gauntlet and they won it. Good for them. And they're the ones that are going to come home with it, obviously, you would think. They still have their tough tests. Their tough tests remaining are going to be Texas at Texas, um, UConn at home, which doesn't count towards the SEC. I know, but that will be a beauty test contest for UConn. Then Vanderbilt, I think they'll handle Vanderbilt quite easily. And then Ole Miss will be interesting, but they'll handle. At Ole Miss could be a tough game, and at Vanderbilt could be potentially a tough game. I expect them to blow up Vanderbilt just with their pressure defense, but if they don't, and then Kentucky at home, I would expect them to handle Kentucky quite easily. That, in my opinion, at least. Um, but this is dangerous because you can always be wrong. So that is South Carolina. The next team I would have on my power ratings, it would be LSU. And LSU, if you take a look at LSU, they're only plus 13. Their offensive rating, they're scoring 109 points per 100 possessions. Efficient field goal shooting percentage 47%, which is lower percentile. Um, the thing where they're crushing teams right now, and it's not surprising, is their offensive rebounding. That's obviously with Morrow and Smith. Turnovers, I know Mulkey hates your point guards, but turnovers aren't too bad, really. Just 16% of their possessions end in turnovers. And then this is where Mulkey would be cranky, is on the defensive side of the floor per 100 possessions. Now, this is just limited to SEC play. They're giving up 96 points per 100 possessions in comparison to South Carolina, that's 78. Field goal percentage is 46%. That's effective field goal percentage. And opponents are getting 33% of available offensive rebounds against them. So that's low for them as well, I would suggest. And turnovers, they're third in causing turnovers. They're behind Ole Miss and Texas at 20%. So 20% of their opponents' turnovers lead, or opponents' possessions lead, end in turnover, essentially. If we take a look at their schedule, let's go back here. So Ole Miss, let's see, let's take a look at LSU. So LSU is, let's see right here. So what they have left. So they're good wins. Obviously, that win against Tennessee was massive. The win against Vanderbilt is looking better, even though that was on their home court. Vanderbilt, and you'll see it later, they're looking strong. And then the loss to South Carolina, that's a good loss to South Carolina. It's just over 10 points. So yeah, I would say that. Yeah, yeah, Mitchell. I'm just going through it. I'm just basically all I've said, Mitchell, is that South Carolina is a beast. And then what I'm doing is I'm working through the top 8 teams and in the SEC just via the numbers. And it might be as boring as watching paint dry. You might like it, but other people I can think is this paint dry. And I didn't want to put it in a video. So right here, the LSU continuing to go down. They're good wins so far. Tennessee, Vanderbilt's a decent win, and then Oklahoma the other night, which was wild, obviously, with Smith being thrown out, and I can't remember who it was for Oklahoma. It was just a wild game. But what they have left, they've got Tennessee left at home. That could be interesting. The way they score it, I think that should be a fun game to watch. Actually, they've got Texas on the road. That will be a rock fight, obviously. And then if they're not careful, Kentucky as well. Kentucky on the road could be a tough game for them. And then they've got Alabama on the road, which could turn into a tough game, and Ole Miss. So they have a lot to come, and it'll be interesting to see how they play it out. Now the next one, if we look at that, South Carolina, let's take a look at Texas. So if we look at the numbers at Texas here, so Texas is just behind Kentucky at plus 18. Their offensive rating per 100 possessions is 105 per 100 possessions. I think, yeah, that's my question about Texas, about their 3-point shooting, and do they have enough offense when they get into a team that gets up on them? Can they get back in the game because they're so dependent on Booker, and Harmon's just not shooting as well as she did last year. Efficient field goal shooting percentage 45%, and then this is the key one for Texas, offensive rebounds. So missed offensive rebounds, they get 42% of their missed offensive rebounds, and they brutalize teams. The only one better, funny enough, is LSU at 46%. So they just rock fight teams basically. And that's exactly what LSU does as well. We might miss a lot of shots, but we're going to brutalize you on the boards. Turnovers not too bad, 16%. And then on the defensive end, defensive rating is good at 87%. That puts them in 80th percentile versus just again, South Carolina, if you go to the top up here, South Carolina is just a beast. There's just no two ways about it at 78. But Texas, that their Kentucky has a better effective field goal shooting percentage than them holding opponents. So Texas is at 44%, but Texas has played better opponents. You'll see that offensive rebounding giving up a bit, but not too bad at 30%. And then the last one, the turnovers they cause. So they're just right behind Ole Miss in terms of causing turnovers. So that's what Vic Schaefer does. We're going to pressure the heck out of you, and we're going to cause you to turn over. What does Texas have left on their schedule? Let's take a look. Um, I'll just move it back over here. Y'all can still hear me all right? Let's take a look at Texas and then their schedule right here. So Texas, obviously, they got the win over Oklahoma. Arkansas, everybody's beating Arkansas. Then you have South Carolina, the loss, and that's a bad loss. That's what might hurt them in trying to get a 1 seed. I think it really depends on how they go versus Arkansas. Then Auburn, the Maryland game will help their overall. I know it's not SEC play, but that will help them overall. That them beating them up, and then the Tennessee game. Tennessee gave them a game on their court. That's a good loss for Tennessee. They've got Ole Miss. They took Ole Miss, and really coming up, that Vanderbilt game will be interesting. Beware, Texas, of Vanderbilt, because Vanderbilt can score the ball. That's going to be the classic, the great defensive team versus a good offensive team. And then they get their shot again. South Carolina will come to Texas, and that's really a make or break for them. If they want to be a 1 seed, they've got to get that victory. Then Kentucky, they're at Kentucky. They got to be on their game for that one. First LSU on their home court. That will be a good rock fight. And then they have Mississippi State. So overall, yeah, I think these are the top three in the conference, in my opinion. But I don't think Tennessee is too far behind. And the reason I say that is just because Tennessee, they've just had some bad luck, in my opinion. Like, not bad luck. You thought they would have won some of those games, and you could argue it. Where's my Tennessee clip? Sorry. Where's Tennessee? Anyway, I'll talk about Tennessee, even though it's not highlighting Tennessee. So that's highlighting Oklahoma, but I want to look at Tennessee. Tennessee is +6, and I think their numbers reflect how good they are. So they are their offensive rating 107 per 100 possessions, effective field goal shooting 49%, offensive rebounding percentage 37%, and turnovers 14%. So they control the ball. And I know she crushes them on the boards, but 37%, they're getting 37% offensive rebounds. I know they play a weird style, but yeah, they're doing everything they can. And I would not, it'll be interesting in the back half if they wear down, but the coach subs them so much. You think they would stay fresh. And the UConn game will be interesting versus Tennessee. That would be a big statement game for Tennessee. That would be a nice little win for them to get if they could get it. On the defensive end, so their defensive rating, they're giving up 100 points per 100 possessions. That puts them low. So that press, when they break it, they give up points essentially. Teams are shooting 51% effective field goal shooting percentage on them, and offensive rebounds that they're getting against them, they're getting 31% of their misses, which isn't as bad as much as Caldwell kills them. Um, but that's the area that she's crushing them after games. Turnovers 21%, which I thought was a bit low considering how much they press teams and they try to run the up tempo game. I'm surprised they're hot behind Ole Miss. And then putting people at the line, they're quiet. They're putting them at the line too much at 31%. But I do like. I am a fan of Tennessee. Like, I think they might be underrated a bit. Did I get this backwards? Yeah, here's the Tennessee schedule right there. So Tennessee, what they have left, I mean, their losses obviously are just brutal. So Oklahoma, they lost by 1 point at home. Then LSU, the loss by 2 points, which is brutal, obviously. And then the Vandy loss really hurts them on the road, and that was a statement game for Vanderbilt. Tennessee really needed that win versus Vanderbilt, and that's what's putting Vanderbilt over them. And then the loss to Texas, it was a rock fight. They were at Texas. That's a good loss in my opinion. If you go down by less than 10 at Texas, I'd be happy with that. And then the loss with South Carolina, because they were able to storm back, that still goes down as a good loss. So Tennessee is right in the mix, and that's why I would put them in the top four of the SEC right now, just in terms of who they played. But big measuring sticks will be when they play UConn, not towards SEC play, but just showing how good they are. Then at LSU, that's your chance for redemption. That will be fun to watch. I'm very much looking forward to that game. Then Ole Miss at Tennessee. They really need that one, and that's going to be, will Ole Miss cause them to have turnovers and beat them up or not? I've got Ole Miss in that game, but we've got a while before that one. They need to clean up Alabama. They need to clean up Kentucky as well. They're at Kentucky. That could be a hard game, and we're going to find out how good Kentucky is. The next one that I want to look at is, let's see, who do we have? Yeah, let's look at Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt's really the surprise here. Three people left. Yeah, three people on the stream. I knew this one was going to be boring. I'm sorry, guys. Um, any questions or anything, just real quick? But yeah, I'm just going to keep on going through these numbers. If it bores the heck out of you, I do apologize. I thought I had, who are we going to talk about? Who did I say I was going to talk about? God. Um, Sorry. Let's go back here. Yeah, let's go with the Commodores. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Vanderbilt. There's Vanderbilt. Okay, there we go. I found it. All right. So Vanderbilt. Hope I'm not um, giving you any issues with seizures with this. All right. With Vanderbilt, here we go. Um, Vanderbilt is +5, and where they're making their money is on the offensive side of the ball. So their offensive rating is 111. That is that is first in the SEC. So that's where they're killing people, is on the offensive side of the ball. Effective field goal shooting percentage is 50%. That's third best. That's behind Florida um, and South Carolina. And the other one, offensive rebounds. They're getting 32 offensive of their missed shots. They're rebounding 32%. So they're not killing the teams on the board. It's just they run an efficient offense. They score points, and they have shooters on their team. They get to the line okay. On defense is why they're not elite, obviously. So if you take a look at their defense of these top teams, they have the worst defense. So if you look at it, they're giving up 106 points per 100 possessions. Effective field goal shooting percentage is their opponents are shooting 52%, and they're giving up 38% misses. The opponents are offensive rebounding 38% of those. And the turnovers, what is the turnovers? So they're turning over their opponents just roughly about 20% of the time. So overall, it's clear Vanderbilt is running a very efficient offense. So Shea Ralph, that's what she has. She's recruited shooters, and hey, we're gonna shoot you to death, and that worked against LSU when they gave LSU a good game. Um, Let me just go back here to the Commodores record here. So if we take a look at Vanderbilt, the loss that hurts them is that loss to Kentucky, because that looks like on paper a team they should have beat, potentially. Like they should have been in the ballpark with them. They had Kentucky on their home court and they gave that one up. And then the loss at Ole Miss as well. Like they got beat up pretty good in those games, but then since LSU they have figured it out. So they went at LSU and gave them a good game. They gave LSU all they could handle, and they shot over 40% field goal percentage. And yeah, Mulkey was very complimentary, as she usually is. Tennessee, big win when they had Tennessee, and that really hurts Tennessee. And then the game versus Alabama, another big win versus Alabama, because Alabama's that team that's in their echelon, in my opinion. And that was a game that they really needed. Alabama needed to get, and that's what's making Vanderbilt on the cusp of a really breakthrough type year. It's going to get tough for them because they get Ole Miss back on their floor. They really need to get that victory right there. They really need to get that victory over Ole Miss. And then they've got at Texas. They just want to put up a respectable performance. And they could get the win over Texas potentially or be in that game if their offense comes on. That's the classic, offense versus defense and what is going to win out. And it really depends on how well they shoot. Mississippi State at home. Mississippi State, they're just behind. It'll be interesting how Mississippi State finishes up, and then at Oklahoma, that will be a fun game. Like both of those teams like their offense and running and gunning. That should be really good. Versus South Carolina, they just want to be respectable. When they have South Carolina on their court, they don't want to get blown out. And then Texas A&M, and then Missouri. So I think of all the teams in the SEC, the I think Vanderbilt, where teams thought they would be, I think they're clearly the overachievers of the SEC so far, 8 games in, and with that schedule, they have played teams. So they've played the Tennessee, they've played LSU and gave them a game, and the only really bad losses, like I say, are Ole Miss and Kentucky. The question is, did they figure it out versus LSU, and are they just going to keep on coming at the second half of the SEC schedule? If they do, then I think they've put up a really good resume, and I think they do deserve to be, ranked. I think they're like 22 now, from what I recall. I'm not sure. I didn't check the polls before I went on. The next one we'll look at is Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma, wow. Um, let's take a look at them. Let's take a look at their factor of four. Um, Sorry if this is driving you guys crazy getting to it. Here's Oklahoma. So their factor of four. So as I mentioned, they're zero point 0.8. So they're plus zero point 0.8 in net rating. Um, their offensive rating is 98.9. I thought that would be higher because usually Varanchek has an offensive juggernaut, and she said it like Mulkey. It was interesting in the press conference. Like Mulkey was saying, "How are you enjoying the SEC?" And she's like, "Your guards are killing me," and I think just that pressure on their guards is giving them a bit of a struggle. Field goal shooting percentage is fine. Offensive rebounding percentage is okay. That's fine with Beers there. But the big issue for them, as she alluded to Mulkey, and when Mulkey mentioned before, 24% of their possessions end in turnover, and that is their big hole. They need to clean that up, get used to the pressure, and hopefully that makes a difference for them coming home towards the end of the season. Defensive rating, it's not egregiously bad. It's better than Tennessee. So they're giving up 98 points per 100. They're giving up efficient field goal shooting percentage is 45. Their opponents are shooting 46%, which isn't terrible either. And offensive rebounds are giving up only 29%. That's probably because they've got Beers in the middle. She's good defensive rebounder. And then the turnovers they cause, and that's really the problem for Oklahoma right now. They're giving up 24% of their possessions are ending in turnover. And then that leads to transition points, and they're not causing many turnovers. Although versus LSU, they put on that press and got back in the game versus that. So before anybody yells at me about that, I do admit they got turnovers on LSU, much to Mulkey's chagrin the other night. Um, the next one, I'm just going to power through this. The next one is, let's see, whoops. Let's go here. Um, Kentucky. Now, Kentucky's interesting, in my opinion. Like, I don't know what you guys think. I don't know if Kentucky is for real or not. The back half gets really tough. They've got some good wins. So they got Mississippi State. They handled them at home. They handled Vanderbilt on the road. That's probably one of their more impressive wins. I can't remember at the beginning of the season who did they beat. They beat somebody non-conference wise at the beginning of the season. It was a fairly good. I can't remember if it was Maryland. No, it wasn't Maryland. They had a good win against Louisville on their home court. Let's see, Auburn, but really Auburn's fine. Georgia, Arkansas, Alabama, that's probably another good win, and that's on their home court. You would expect them to win on the home court. I think we're really going to figure out in the back half how good Kentucky is. So they'll be at Oklahoma. That could turn into a tough game for them. I'm looking forward to it. The interesting part about that one is Kentucky is usually good about not turning over the ball. And we saw Kentucky's turnover, or not Kentucky, but we've seen Oklahoma's turnover problems at Ole Miss as well. I'm curious how those are two tough road games, Oklahoma and at Ole Miss, and I want to see how they go in those. I think we'll start to get a feel of how good Kentucky is, and then they have Texas on their home court, so it gets brutal for them. Those three games, I think we'll figure out if Kentucky's for real or not. Are they really in that upper echelon, or are they sort of like lower 19, 20, 22 type team? And I suspect, um, I don't know. I go back and forth on Kentucky. I say if you have a good coach and a good point guard, you've got a chance, and they have players up front with stack and they're rebounding fairly well. But yeah, I'm just we're going to find out. And then of course they've got LSU on their home court. They better be able to rebound, and then Tennessee as well on their home court. So they all their schedule, like I said, is to come. So it'll be interesting to see how good they are. And then nothing like going to South Carolina. That's just brutal. So you can see how Kentucky is the back half. So I don't hate Kentucky, but Vandy's 14 or 16. All right, thanks for that. Which team do you think would win the rest of their games? Well, I'd go South Carolina. That's not a big pick. Yeah, I think South Carolina might win out. Yeah, I'll talk about that in a second. Let me power through this. So Kentucky, y'all need to prove to me if you're a fraud. If you're for real or if you're a fraud. I'm very curious to see that. All right. And right now, I'm more of a believer in Vanderbilt with their wins versus Kentucky. Kentucky, I'm saying, and even if that didn't, God didn't Kentucky beat Vanderbilt as well, and I'm still more of a believer in Vanderbilt just because they seem to have found another gear once they had that game against LSU. So, but I could be wrong. If Kentucky, how they go in these next three games, hey, prove it to me. You show me how good you are. And I like Kenny Brooks. It's not like I'm a Kentucky hater, by the way. I like Amore. I like Brooks. Let's take a look at Ole Miss. Hotty toddy, gosh almighty, who the hell are we? Hey, it just takes a little while for my software to come up. That's Mississippi State. That's Alabama. Ole Miss, here we go. Ole Miss numbers are pretty good. So they're pretty good. They're plus 14. Their offensive rating is 107, or they're scoring 107 points per 100 possessions. That's good for the SEC. They're shooting a good effective field goal shooting percentage at 49%. Um, and yeah, yeah, that's offensive rebounding percentage for Ole Miss, 36%. So they beat up teams almost as not quite as good as obviously Texas and Oklahoma, but you know how they play. They're a physical, athletic team, and their turnovers maybe a little bit high at 17% of their possessions. Indian turnover. On the defensive end, 92 points per 100 possessions. That puts them in the upper echelon of SEC. And then teams shoot well against them at 50%, and I think that's because they don't have a lot of height inside. When I watched them against UConn, I don't know if somebody was out or not, but they really didn't have. They were athletic 1 through 5 and could switch everything, but on the inside, I need to look at the data on it, but I suspect that might be an issue. And then uh, but they block out well because they're only giving up 27% offensive rebounds for the opponent. So that's good. And then turnovers are causing 25%. And that goes along with they're athletic. They play high pressure defense. They turn you over, they get in transition, and that's why they go so well, in my opinion. Um, yeah, so let me just see their schedule. I can't remember who they have left. Have they played the hardest ones? Does UConn have any good teams coming up? Yeah, they do. Yeah, UConn's playing Tennessee, I think on Wednesday, and UConn has South Carolina like on the 17th, I think it is from memory. So yeah, UConn has stuff coming up, and that's the You know, people think I'm a UConn homer, but that's where it's going to be proved. Is UConn for real or not? That'll be the question. Those two games, I liken that to being their midterm exams to see how much they've grown. Now with Ole Miss, just to look at their wins, they had the win over Vanderbilt, which is looking like a good win. Um, and that's the thing, Joe. They opened up with a soft schedule, and that the last 8 games we're gonna find out if they're for real, 100% right. Um, and Ole Miss, we're gonna find out where they are as well. They've got the good win over Vanderbilt, but then Alabama, that loss hurt them, and then Florida. I don't care about Florida, but a good win over Mississippi State. Texas, the loss. That was a good loss. It was only by 3 points, but it was on their home court. They really needed that victory. They really need a victory over a good quality opponent. And that was the one. If you watch that game, they let it get away towards the end. And it's like, who's going to take the shot for you at the end of the game? Vanderbilt, big game for Vanderbilt and Ole Miss. I'm looking forward to that one. Same thing with Oklahoma. That will be the way it's going for Oklahoma. I favor Ole Miss in that. I think it tends to. I think teams that play good, hard defense on Oklahoma, Oklahoma struggles and wears down. But to be determined, I can't wait to see it. And then, like we keep on saying, Kentucky, are you for real or not? Well, if you're for real, you need to beat Ole Miss at home and protect your home court. At Tennessee, dangerous game for them because Tennessee likes that transition game. That'll be fun to watch. And then their big one, they've got South Carolina on their court, and then they're at LSU. So they still have a lot to come. So I yeah, for right now, I put Ole Miss behind there. And the way I've got this outlined right here, I mean, this is essentially my power ratings for the SEC. I've got South Carolina, LSU, Longhorns, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and that's probably unfair to Vanderbilt based on their record and things like that. But I just think Tennessee's been unlucky with their losses, and I think their net rating is impressive to me. I've got Oklahoma, Kentucky, and then the Rebels. Uh, yeah, yeah. The big one for UConn is to be well. If UConn plays well versus Tennessee. Well, they need to get the win over Tennessee. If they play well and don't lose by more than 8 versus South Carolina, UConn's fine because their net rating on their schedule based on who they've played, it's surprising. Like they're number 2. It'll continue to go down as the season goes on. But yeah, that's what it'll go. Yeah, Oklahoma played good at the end of the LSU game. They put that press on, and LSU just couldn't handle it. Like Kim Mulkey hates her point guards. I'm sure of it. Like she's had point guard issues. It's like how Minnesota used to struggle with their point guards. The last one is Alabama. We'll take a look at. The one I probably could be nicer to would be Mississippi State. I didn't put them up here, but they're in that upper echelon. I probably should have had them. They're just minus by a few. Um, Alabama. Um, Alabama's numbers aren't bad. Um, and they're up there. They're one of the better teams, right? I'll take a look at Mississippi State's numbers. But Alabama, let's see, let's take a look at them. They're -1, and I think that sums them up. They've had some games they should have won. Um, and their offensive rating is 100. Effective field goal shooting 49%, around that. Offensive rebounding percentage 30%, and turnover 17%. So nothing wows you, but saying, "Oh my God, they're bad." They're sort of like medium range in everything. Their offense is mediumly good. Their shooting percentage is medium good. Their turnovers aren't too bad. They're probably not getting the free. They're yeah. Let's see. Are they getting the free throw line a lot? 25%, again, not the worst, maybe a little bit low. And then maybe it's their defense that's handicapping them. If you look at their defensive rating, they're giving up 101 points per 100 possessions. That's like Tennessee as well, and they don't play that. And then let's see, what is it, effective field goal shooting percentage? 45% their opponents are shooting. That's probably a tiny bit high. And then their opponents are rebounding 36%. That would be the big area for them, I'd say, is they're giving up offensive rebounds. That's pretty low, and they're not causing many turnovers at only 16%. So Yeah, if I was their homework to do is to work on causing more turnovers on defense and cleaning up the boards as well, so not getting crushed on the boards by their opponents, I'd say. Um, I don't have the schedule for Mississippi. I didn't put it up. I apologize. But let's take a look at their numbers as well. So, and that's where really this tier ends. After Mississippi State, it's like the next team below is like minus 10. I'd have to look and see who that is. But for Mississippi, um, did I go through the schedule? Oh, sorry. Let's. I don't mean to mess y'all about here. Let's go through the schedule real quick for Alabama. So let's see if they have a chance to prove themselves. Um, so yeah, that's yeah. Yeah. Joe, you're more of a lack of believer, Joe, than I am in Kentucky. Yeah, I can tell you're not impressed by them, and you could be right. They might fall off a cliff. With Alabama, let's see. Let's take a look. So their losses, Texas, yeah, they got pounded by Texas at Texas. That's a bad loss. Um, Ole Miss is a good win on the road, so that stacks up well. Lost South Carolina, what is it, 76 to 58. It could be worse. That's on their home court though. Vandy, that's the one that hurts them. That's why I have Vandy ahead of them is Vandy took it to them. Vandy won their home court, protected their home court, and that would have been a big win by them. They only lost it by two, and then at Kentucky they couldn't get that win, and that's really hurting them. What do they have left? Mississippi State will be a tough game. They've got at Tennessee, that will be a tough one, and then LSU. They've got LSU at home, and they're on the road for Oklahoma. So they've still got tough games. That's what's going to be fascinating. The SEC's not done yet. The last eight games we're really going to find out where these teams stand. Now I don't have like I said, I don't have Mississippi State's schedule on me, but I will go through their numbers just because I think they're in that upper echelon team. Because if you look at it, um, it really divides after that. Like Florida is -8, so I think these top teams have really broken themselves away. And with Mississippi State, let's see, net rating -2, like I said. Offensive rating, they can score the ball over 100, but not the best. Yeah, and then efficient field goal shooting percentage 51%, offensive rebound percentage 32%, which is mid-range, and then turnovers. That's where they're naughty. 19% turnovers. The only one higher, is everybody higher, would be Oklahoma. Them and Oklahoma need to go to the corner. Their point guards need to go to the corner, and I can forgive Oklahoma because they're pushing pace so much. But yeah, that's where Mississippi State needs to clean up their game. And then defensive side of the ball, yeah, that's not real impressive. 106 per 100 possessions. That's too much. Their opponents seem pretty comfortable shooting effective field goal shooting percentage of 50%. Offensive rebounds, they're protecting the boards pretty well, only giving up 21% offensive rebounds. And the turnovers they cause, yeah, they're only causing 15%. So that's why they're naughty, if you like. They're turning over the ball too much so teams can get in transition, and they're not causing enough turnovers so they can get in transition. And that's a recipe to why they are not better than they are. Um, all right, so that clears up that. Let's see, let's go back over here. Um, so with that, I would say let's just take a look at these schedules. Oh, actually, I do have it. All right, let's see. Here's the Crimson Tide. I did have no, but I don't have Mississippi State. That's the problem. All right, so like I say, I, I the big games coming up. Here's the question. I've got uh, I think Texas and LSU, that is a big game for both of those teams, and that's going to be a hard one for LSU. I think that will really decide who's number two. I haven't looked at the tiebreakers and everything else on it, but in my mind, that will be a big game because they're really battling out for number two to see who stands where. If Texas wants to make a play that they're number two, over LSU, then Texas needs to get that win over LSU, and then they need to get back at South Carolina when South Carolina comes to their court. If they give that, then I would push up the Longhorns over Texas. To further push up Tennessee, what does Tennessee need to do to really improve them in my eyes? They need to beat up UConn and say, yeah, you've played fluff in the Big East. We're a legitimate power in the SEC, and we're going to knock you over. It's a big, big game for them. And then they need to get payback on LSU on their home court. I don't think they'll do it. They need that. And the other chance is they really need to knock down Kentucky and say, yeah, Kentucky, you're a pretender. Now Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt really the game versus the two coming up. So they need to really pound Ole Miss and show Ole Miss, hey, we can score on offense, and our offense is better than your defense, and we can take you. Texas, go at Texas and put up a good performance. I don't expect them to win that one at Texas. Don't get blown out. Give Texas a game. Hope that Texas's offense gets really stinky and they can take them. And then the big ones as well. I really can't. I've said it before, but I really look forward to them playing Oklahoma. I think that'll be a fun game. Yeah, they do. I just think that one's going to be an old-fashioned rock fight, the LSU Texas game, and I look forward to it. With the Sooners they need to get that win over Kentucky. It's on their home court. It's a way to resettle, and then they need to prove the Sooners need to prove that they can take a big physical team and it won't hinder their offense and they can hold on to the ball. That's going to be the one versus Ole Miss, and they need to prove we can hold on to the ball and play with these guys, a physical team. I think that's what their homework is over the next few games as well. Looking forward to them playing Vanderbilt. I think that will be an offensive showdown. They'll be on Vanderbilt's court, and they need to get that. Nobody out finesses us in a lot of ways. And I'm not saying they're totally a finesse team, but you know what I mean. Two offensive teams that are aggressive offensively. They need to say, hey, that's our gig, not yours. Because in a lot of ways, I see Vanderbilt as a bit of a Big 12 team. No disrespect, Vanderbilt. As I've said, I'm not going to go on about Kentucky. They just need to prove they're for real. Their second half schedule will really commence. Now I'm going to go through the next two, but y'all start lining up questions if you have questions for me. With Tennessee, let's see. With the Rebels, Ole Miss, I'm sorry, Ole Miss. But yeah, they need to get that victory over Vanderbilt and really establish, hey, we're in that next tier. We're behind Tennessee. We're right on Tennessee's trail, and just dominate out in Oklahoma as well. I mean, SEC is just so good in the top part, and prove that Kentucky is a fraud. That's what they're hoping to do, and just play it out. They've got games there to prove who they are. Ole Miss will be interesting. Do they have enough offense? And that will be my question with Ole Miss. Can they control the games and win it out late? Because that game there for Texas was there for them to win, and they just could not close it out. They weren't really. They it felt like they panicked a little bit towards the end of the game. Um, with with Alabama, what do they have left? What does Alabama have left? I'd say Mississippi State, Tennessee, LSU, Oklahoma. Those are the ones they need to prove they're for real and get those wins. Do you think Smiley Smith being disqualified will affect the game? I guess no, I don't. I think they'll be fine with that. I think they can play with Poffenbarger. Or no, sorry, not Poffenbarger. What is it? Wolfenbarger? God, I've forgotten her name. Wolfenbarger, I think it is. Wolfenberger? Oh, God. But anyway, no, I think they'll be fine with that. Um, yeah, and they'll. I know they don't love Del Rosario, but they'll give her a few minutes, and then Mulkey likes to go small anyway, so she can go Wolfenbarger with Morrow, and then at times they've had it where I don't mind it when they play. I could see them even playing Morrow at the five, and then having Williams play the four. Like they're so good and they're so physical, they can do it. From BE, maybe Creighton slips into the tourney, but short run, if so. UConn is handicapped by their conference big time. Yeah, they are. They are. But it's one of those where um, take LSU. LSU, they play and their non-conference is no good, and they're like, hey, the SEC tunes us up for the tournament. Well, UConn's doing the same thing. UConn's like our our conference is dog s fine, we're gonna have a hard non-conference basically, and so they played their hard non-conference. Where they took Notre Dame, USC, Louisville, and there was another one, Ole Miss. So they played some hard games. Now they get to reorganize themselves and conference play, dominate, and then they get to take their final exam and versus not Ole Miss, but Tennessee and South Carolina. So I think UConn's schedule is really good. That's what I think, in my opinion. Why are you crying, you two, Jim? Why are you crying? Tell me, please. I don't know what the crying means. Big Ten, SEC will get 8 to 10 teams into the tourney. Big 12, ACC probably six. Big East might be two. Yeah, I think it'd be UConn and Creighton, the of the Big East, and fine by me. I mean, I like I guess I'm supposed to. The only thing I didn't like about the end of the Pac, well, I wish the Pac-12 was still around, but I do like how USC and how USC and UCLA are in the Big Ten. I enjoy that. I just wish Oregon State could have gotten like um, a seat at the table. I wish Oregon State could have kept their team together and gotten a seat at the Big Ten table. That would have been fun in terms of basketball and where they're at, you know. But yeah, that is interesting. I'm curious on reading the articles on who will be the number one seeds. Um, the question you can go in many directions. Will the SEC get two number one seeds? And I don't know what y'all think about that, but I think it depends on how Texas goes. If Texas can win that second South Carolina game and win out, then there's a possibility SEC would get two seeds, and it depends on how UCLA and USC go up against each other in the Big Ten. If one team, if UCLA just beats up on USC, and I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if they did, then that would knock USC, I think, to a second seed potentially. Because the way I see it now, I see South Carolina, UCLA, um, South Carolina, UCLA, Notre Dame, and then who's my fourth? I'd have to look at it. Who's my fourth? I'm forgetting somebody. Um, God, who is my fourth? Not TCU. I'd have to look at the standings. Let me go back here. Hold on. I'll just get off this. Let me get off this right here. Yeah. Okay. Let's look at the top 10. Um, top 25. Sorry, I'm just bringing up top 25 women basketball. Okay. Okay, let's go. All right. Yeah, Wolfenberger. Yeah, what is her name? What is it? Is it Wolfen? I know what I'm doing. It's Wolfenberger. Isn't it? God, I'm getting her confused with Poffenbarger. God, got a Poffenbarger and a Wolfenbarger? You're kidding me. I'll just call her the Wolf. All right. Okay, so UCLA, South Carolina, Notre Dame, and then the question is, will USC get knocked out and Texas move up? That's my question because I think between between USC and UCLA, if they split that, then they'll stay up there, I reckon. Depending on what Texas does. If UConn, the only way UConn can get into it would be if they take out Tennessee and they take out South Carolina, in my opinion. I think they'll be a two seed. Um, and it doesn't really matter because there are 8 teams right here that can play. I think ultimately on this, I think TCU is going to be better than, I think TCU is better than Ohio State. I'm not a believer in Ohio State. Let's see how they finish out the Big Ten, but I've got TCU being the 8 seed now. I know everybody's impressed by Duke's defense. I want to see how they finish out the ACC as well. But yeah, with that, it's equal marking. I pray that the committee, if there's one thing I want the committee to do when they set up the brackets, I would love for UCLA, and if LSU is a two seed, I'd love for them to be in the same bracket as I. God, that would be fantastic if we had a rematch of UCLA LSU. Just because I know Corey Close doesn't like Mulkey, and I know Mulkey has no time for Corey Close, and I want to see that one play out. And then just seeing how UCLA would react to that game, because when it gets tight, I favor Mulkey over Corey Close, and that could be a fun one in my opinion. Who else is there? Um, yeah, those are the main ones I see. Did anybody have any questions or anything before I go? I've got a video coming out tonight. I want to edit a video right now. I'm doing one on the WNBA. I know if you would have listened this for God, how long did this video go? But if you've been listening to this video, you don't want to listen to my WNBA video. But it's interesting because I'm doing something just on the on the just an unbelievable, crazy move the WNBA made in terms of their money and what they did. And I'm curious if people are going to like it or hate it. But yeah, that's what I'm working on right now. And then I'll continue to try to do the live streams. I don't know if this one was too boring or not. But yeah, I definitely went numbers heavy, which might not be a great thing. Did anybody have any questions before I go or anything? I appreciate y'all coming on and everything else. Again, I don't know if it was too dry, this one. Any questions? And I'm on a delay here with my software. That's why I have to sometimes chat and throw y'all a question. But one thing I might show y'all real quick is I'll see if this thing works. Um, let me show you this last thing. Um, I think this is pretty cool. So if I go, yeah, yeah, that's not bad. I'm not a massive and how South Carolina blew up Tennessee was pretty. That was a bit of an indictment on Tennessee, I would say. Let me go South Carolina here. Yeah, it was all right. I don't know. I think it was probably two numbers. I'm terrible for going through the numbers, but Thane, it's my I love numbers a lot of way. Well, I'm not good at math, but I do love looking at the numbers. Let me just get you this one. So if we look at the SEC right here, this is another interesting one. Here's a stat you'll like. All right, and I'll finish with this last stat right here. But if we go through the teams right here, I find this one interesting. Where if you find um, how many points, how many transition points. If you look at this one right here, they break up. Um, let me go. I can't find it. I'm sorry. Um, I can't find it. I'm sorry, guys. I'll have to find it, but I can find out how many how many are in transition offense. Is there any argument for South Carolina to be the 2 seed if they lose to UConn? No, no. I'll answer that one right now. No argument. Their schedule's been so damn good. If they lose to UConn, no, I wouldn't do it unless they totally collapse throughout the SEC. But the rest of the way, if they had injuries or something like that. But no, I don't see how they could be a 2 seed because their two losses. Um, People rubbish UConn, but UConn would be a good loss because UConn, their strength of schedule is good. UConn, like their net ratings, like number two, so their two losses would be good. Their only problem is supposedly the committee doesn't like when you get blown out. Well, UCLA is blowing out everybody, so yeah, I've got no issue. Yeah, I don't see how South Carolina would not be a 2 seed, in my opinion. I think more danger would be, I think USC is the one in danger of losing their 2 seed. All right. Any others? Any others? I was trying to find out. I think I can break down how many points you get in transition, but I can't find it now, unfortunately. I was gonna see if I could find it. Um, oh yeah, here it is. This is looking quickly. This is looking at the offense. Um, Let me just blow it up here. Sorry. Okay. This is looking at offenses on how many points they get in. Let's see, what do we have here? What if they didn't win the SEC tournament? I if they went out the rest of the way, they're a 1 seed, unless they lose to UConn, unless they use to UConn. But yeah, I just don't see any way. Um, I don't see it. Yeah, I think anything can happen in life, but yeah, Gamecocks. I don't see how they're not going to. That's one I would not put the college fund on. Let me put it that way. I just don't see it. I mean, injuries could always happen and everything else, but even if UConn was able to snap their streak, and I still see South Carolina being a 1 seed unless they fall off a cliff. And South Carolina fan will probably crush me for even suggesting that. We're South Carolina. We never lose. I searched online, but I don't understand how the tournament is set up as far as which. Yeah, either do I. I need to know what this is. Like, there are supposedly all these bylaws that Charlie Cream talks about, and I can't find that either. And I don't want to. And I can imagine how complicated it is. And I struggle just with looking at numbers at the best of times. So I'll let them figure it out. But I assume that UCLA and LSU could be in the same bracket together. And my God, please, committee, do that because I want to see LSU versus UCLA. Did I say UConn? I think I might have said UConn. But no, what I want to see is I really want to see LSU versus UCLA because I want to see that rematch and see how they would do. And as well, the one I crush a lot, I've crushed Del Rosario. They probably have to play Del Rosario versus Betts a little bit. That'd probably be the game where she'd have a good game, and I'd have to eat it on that. And if I do, that's fine. Just on here, real quick, this is looking at how many of the shots, how much of their offense comes from the half court versus how much of it comes through the transition and putback. So if you look at it, Kentucky, like 84% of their shots come from the half court game. 11 come in transition and 4 from putbacks. And the same with that, and I'm not worried about Arkansas. Sorry, Arkansas. Same thing. Let's see who is the least transitional team. So there you go. Tennessee. So Tennessee gets the least of their points in the half court. Then it's Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Auburn, Kentucky, and then it builds from there. Did I do this wrong? Hold on. Field goal. I'm going to bore y'all with the numbers again. Yeah. So right there, I think that's how many the percent. Okay, this would be the percentage of attempts. So that's how many shots they get in the half court. So Tennessee's the least, and it just goes from there. It'd be Oklahoma, Kentucky, South Carolina, Alabama, Florida, Auburn, LSU, Texas, and then transition. Let's see who gets the most attempts in transition. So it's LSU crushes 10. Yeah, and there you go. Not surprising. South Carolina, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt. You can see a trend there, can't you? All the best teams get their points in transition because they're turning them over. And then putbacks, again, that won't surprise us either. LSU, of course, they're dominating that. Texas is crushing people on the boards. South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Ole Miss. Vandy's doing all right on the boards, aren't they? Tennessee, and as much as she crushes them. Um, yeah, I just wanted to show you all that last one. Any other questions before I go? Any other questions? All right. Well, then look out for this WNBA video. Let me know what you think of it. I think it's fairly amazing, this deal that WNBA cut, and I'm curious to see what y'all think of it as well. Um, but y'all all have a great night. I've got to do some editing for that video. Do you think LSU can make it to the Final Four? Oh yeah, yeah. I think they all can. That's where I laugh at when I get comments all the time. It's like, no way UConn's making it to the Final Four, or no way this team's making it to the Final Four. I think if you look at the top 8, any one of those teams could make the Final Four. And look at it last year. NC State made it to the Final Four. Like, it's a one and done. Anything can happen. But of those 4 teams, my God, UCLA, South Carolina, Notre Dame, USC, it's not always going to go chalk. So any one of those teams could do it. I could see Duke going on a run and doing it. Those are the main ones I see. No, that's all right. Thank you for that, YouTube Jim. Yep. I'm gonna get off now, and yeah, because I'm going to go on and on. I need to do some editing, but no, thanks for that. I hope it wasn't too dreadfully boring. If you liked it, then give it a like. I think I'm supposed to say that and give the comments. But yeah, some people hate it, but some people like it because all the time. I don't know. When I watch YouTube, it tends to be, hey, blah 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 is a terrible blah blah blah, or this person's doing their thing, or this person's doing well. What is their thing, and what's the thing these teams do? That's why I like it. I know it's dry, but that's why I'm looking at the numbers and saying this is by the numbers what a team is doing really well. All right, thanks again. Y'all have a great night. Okay. They have not been to that's the question. And I was about to get off, but then you draw me back in with that one. SEC is the toughest conference, but UCLA hasn't been to a Final Four. But at some stage, you would think they would break through with that talent. If Corey Close doesn't make it with this team, I don't know if she'll ever make it. This team has to make it to the Final Four. But pressure does funny things. Yeah, go watch it. I'll put this one public. It wasn't too bad. Shahid, it was just very dry with numbers. I went way too heavy on numbers, just going through each of the teams in the SEC and what their numbers were. All right, so some will like it. I imagine some are just going to dreadfully hate it. I don't know. It'll be interesting, but yeah, Faria, yeah, that is 100% right. Is that's the thing with UCLA, and if UCLA had won if they had one Final Four appearance or whatever, I'd be calling it now because they are so dominant and just so nasty on both sides of the ball and seem to have the full team on paper look so good. But that's the thing that you've got to worry about UCLA. They've never done it before. I don't think they, Elite Eight, they've only made, I think, like two Elite Eights as well. So yeah, that's what I want to see. UCLA is 2 ninths. Best Bets is the best right now. They are, and yeah, they're almost like they're like I compared them earlier in the year to the Indianapolis Colts. Remember when Peyton Manning couldn't make it to the Super Bowl and he couldn't win the big one and all that sort of stuff? That's what they remind me of because until they do it in the tournament, people are going to have questions and UCLA is just going to have to eat it on them. And people are going to say, prove it to me because that's the SEC. We'll say to them, UCLA is very pretty. They're nice. They're a nice little team, but they're not the SEC. And when we get into them, you beat up on our tough guy, South Carolina, on their home court. But man, when we get your shot at them, that I've seen in some of the draws that maybe if South Carolina in, I hope that South Carolina and UCLA, I wonder if they'll meet again in their uh, like on their side in the Final Four potentially if they both make it through. That'd be interesting if they put them on opposite sides of the bracket because I would like a rematch of that. I'd be happy with that for a final as well. All right. No more questions. All right.